is creative here? Okay. I can see some of you have raised your hand, and there are those who haven't. And the first thing I want to tell for those who haven't raised their hand is that one of the first things that I learned about creativity is that you've got to believe before you can become. So you've got to believe that you are creative, like you believe that in God before you can become a fully fledged Christian. So it's something that you have to practice in your mindset. So today I'm going to be talking about creativity at work. And that's going to be stretched in 3 parts. The first one is going to be life lessons that I have received from my own context and my own journey as a professional around what made me find solutions, become creative. The second is how I apply creativity to my work and some live examples of my company, what I do. And the third, what I do as an entrepreneur to remain creative and continue to develop my creativity. Okay, so real things that I use. Okay, so let's start. I'm gonna go to slides very quickly. So first here is a little bit about my journey. Left Brazil at the age of 19, and I had to reinvent my life very quickly. 11 years later, I was a managing partner of my first major firm, which is an international management consulting firm. And age 35, I had my first child. I became a CEO of international NGO. And at the age of 40, I had a midlife crisis because I realized the more successful I was becoming, the worse I was becoming as a father and a husband. And then something had to change, and then I moved to Portugal. And I also realized in that time that really I had to redesign my life because some of the things that I regard as success, they started to look like failures. For instance, the failure of not being able to actually spend enough time with my child, the failure of not actually having enough time to spend with my wife. So things had to change. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I regarded that period there from 19 to 30 as my most creative years. I left Brazil and had to drop out of law school. And most of my family for over the last 4 generations, they are lawyers. They like the legal field. And I have to be the black sheep. And I arrived in England not knowing anyone. Didn't know anyone. I knew I wanted to study university. I had no money to pay for the university. So I have to really figure how I'm gonna, pay for university, how I'm gonna actually get my English to a level that I could study academically, and how could I actually become a fully fledged entrepreneur and achieve something in life. And over 10 years, actually, there was a massive trajectory. So for me, what that life has taught me is that life is a series of problem-solving exercises, okay? And the bigger the problem you have, the more it's gonna drive you to be creative. So I'm gonna, to make this actionable, so first of all, what's the insight from there? Is that creativity is not about finding the right answer. It's about asking the right questions to yourself. Because if you want to be truly creative, you don't really predict the answer that you're gonna get. Like in the example that Luca has just given us. You don't know what's gonna be the end goal. So there is no point about trying to find the right answer. It's really about asking the right question. And here, it's something what I use to ask the right question. So ask yourself, what's the one thing that I can do such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? And that's a question that's really, really powerful because it's a question that you can apply more broadly and more specifically. And I'll give you some real tangible examples of that. So you can make that more broad by making it big. You can make it small, big, or make it more specific so that you can get the result you get. I'll provide a real example of that. So that's something I had just started a new business. Is some of the questions we're asking ourselves. Make it broad. What can I do to double our sales this month? If I wanted to make it it's small but broad, what can I do to increase the sales broadly? If I want to make that very specific, what can I do to double the sales in the next 6 months? And if you want to make it really that more specific, what can I do to increase the sales by 5% this year? So you can really play with that concept to really try to help you think to unlock the value that we want, okay? I hope that it makes sense. Now, as Christian, as a faith-driven entrepreneur, what I tend to ask every day myself is like, Lord, what do you want me to do with this time, talent, and resources that you have given every day? Because in a way, my context also drives my creativity. The ambition that God is giving me to transform and question things in the market and be actually a role model in the market, it's a lot of what drives me. And that inspiration, that guidance and direction, for me, it feels needs to come from Him. So as I have mentioned to you, as some of you know, I have a company called Behind Living. Our mission is to empower professionals to lead a more connected, health, and fulfilling lifestyle. And we use property to do this. We are investors into property, we are developers, and we operate properties in a way that lead to people to elevate their quality of life. We have won quite a few awards as one of the most innovative companies in our sector, but that's not what makes us relevant, okay? What is relevant here is the process in which we use in order to get to this result. And here's a little bit of something that comes from Ideal, which is a company that I admire a lot. And in business, creativity needs to have a framework. And this framework of Ideal is what I often use to give a context to creativity. And the first one is whatever product or service I create, I need to be thinking, is this desirable for the end user? Is it gonna add value? It's gonna transform people's lives. That's number one. Number two, is this technically possible to build this? Is the solution that I'm thinking that's gonna meet someone's need is actually financially viable? Because if it's not financially viable, it's not sustainable, so it doesn't serve anyone. It's not gonna last long. We are here for the long run. So whenever I think of creativity, I would love you to think about these trees. What I'm doing is relevant to people, is actually possible to be built, and is it a sustainable and a financially viable product? Because if creativity is not financially viable, then what's the point? So let me tell a little bit how do we go about finding out if something's desirable. So when we created Behind Living, that was 8 years ago, we realized that in that moment, there was a change, a generational change in the rental market. In the past, most of the people we use in renting properties were families. But in the last, I would say, 10 years, we have seen more Gen Z and millennials become the primary consumers of rental in the world. And who is the Gen Z who rent, and Gen Z and millennials are those people that today are between 18 and 45, okay? So these are the first generation to grow with the internet. So they consume products in a different way. Also, their expectations of products and services are also very different. But we didn't make any assumptions. We had to go and find out. So we did focus groups. We spent a lot of time. I went to 7 countries, talking to as many millennials and Gen Z as I could to understand the lifestyle and understand the pain points. So these guys, today, the sort of challenge they have is a high cost of living. They went to rental as a lifestyle choice. They're going to change jobs 11 times on the lifetime. So they want something that's transitional, but they want quality. There has been a massive increase in freelance work, which has accelerated following the pandemic, but this has already started before. So they want contractual flexibility. So the types of contracts that government want, to sign a 1-year contract for rental, doesn't make sense for these guys. So we as a company practice contracts anything from 2 weeks onward. So we have to do things outside what the law prescribed to meet people's needs. And that's the most lonely generation in history. Despite everything we have seen about social media, it's actually proven that this generation suffers from loneliness much more than others. And one of the reasons is because a lot of them live alone. And they spend a lot of time alone. They're connected to millions of people, but very few are their meaningful friends. And the other thing, they sort of grown up with the internet. So we have to create something different. We knew that. And what we went to look at is like, what are the sort of strategies in the market? What is available in the market today in terms of when they want to rent, what is available? Is what what is available in the market, does it meet their needs? And we could see clearly there is a massive disconnect between what is available and what's created. So not finding what we wanted, we have to create our own strategy. So we are one of the first companies to come up with something called co-living. We're not the only one. There is about 10, 15 companies globally that came up with this concept, and we kind of support each other. But essentially create a sort of rental that was design-led. You know, we'll have the standards of a 3-star hotel, was service-oriented. So we made rental, instead of being something that's it's variable, we made it fixed. So all bills are included, and we put lots of service that you can buy, like cleaning and other things. It's tech-enabled, so we use a lot of technology. So we have an app which connects everyone in the space or across our properties. And we create a community experience that's where a lot of the impact on people's values comes from. Because a lot of these people left their families behind, and they feel that they want to be in a supportive network. So that's what we did. So what we have learned from this experience is that the research and experience of others is the best place to start to look for creativity. Don't sit in a place and go, okay, let me be creative now. Go and read. Go and talk to who you think is the people that you want to serve and change their lives. They are going to provide more valuable insight for you to be creative than anyone else. But also don't settle for the common denominator. You don't, and the reason for that, I think, Luke alluded to that, isn't it? The quality of everything you do points to God. So you don't really represent yourself. You don't represent only your business, but you represent the God you worship. Let me give you a practical example of what it means in our field not to settle for the common denominator. So that is related to building something that's feasible and viable, okay? So this real project is a property that was offered to us in Porto. That is a parking lot. And somehow we felt this property had some potential because the location was incredible. You can see the property is below a building, and the whole area of the back was the parking lot. Was being offered for very little money. We felt, actually, what about if we create a co-living space there? The question is, how do we do this? Technically, we knew it was going to be very difficult. If you would want to settle for the common denominator, we would have done that. That's what most architects would do. They would make an opening in the middle. They would put rooms from one side and units to the other side. The problem we have here is that people have no privacy. They look into each other's property. So we said, okay, what can we do here? If we know we want to provide a space that really elevates people's lifestyle. We start with drawings, prototyping drawings. Think, okay, what about if we build like something asymmetrical? You know, that give people some natural light, and we create areas where they can have some privacy. We start to prototype this. Then we went to literally playing like kids. You know, think of different ways of structuring and using the space. And after a space more or less of 3 weeks, we ended up with that. So as you can see, we started to bring natural light, and we create small garden areas where each and every person we have that would be there would have their own sort of like private space. You know, they would have not only the privacy, but then they would have also the sort of access to natural light. So what was this? That's what it became. Okay? So that's an example how we start to think about this. So we only went from this to this because we really didn't want to settle for the common denominator. We had the motivation to really bless this user with something that was extraordinary. So creativity is about unlocking unrealized value. For most people, they would look at that place as a garage, and the only thing they would think is that this serves only as a garage. But we're bold enough to think that it could be used as something else. But we have to go to the plane of 3 to 4 weeks of exploration to get to what we felt could be the possibility. So for me, the path to extraordinary creativity is realizing that every single encounter or project is an opportunity to love people in a way that draws people to God. So in Beehive, we are unapologetically a Christian values company. We are an inconvenience to a lot of our bigger players because we keep winning awards and take them away from them, because we tend to treat people in a way that it's not common for them. But because we're driven by something else. Okay, and let me see how I'm doing with time. Okay, almost the end. So here are some of the strategies I use on my daily life to boost my creativity, okay? So the first one is I work very much on trying to understand what my purpose is. And our purpose as a family, and me as a business, me as an entrepreneur, and our purpose as a company is the same. It's to bring light to this world. Actually, the holding company of Beehive, that owns Beehive, is called Light Factory. So we're here to create positive change for others. So it's not about ourselves. But then the number one criteria for us to bring people in the company is not technical capability. It's why they share this vision and they want to also have impact in people's lives. Obviously, you need to know more or less to do what you are brought in to do. But believing the same mission and seeing the same things we see becomes the number one criteria, okay? The second thing, embrace failure. If you're not prepared to fail, you're not going to be creative. Because failure is going to teach you way more than success will ever will. I'm sure Luca, from these various adaptation transitions he went through, he learned so much from each and every opportunity there. So embrace failure and make failure every part of your life. There's nothing wrong with failing, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. The other thing is stop thinking that you're going to do a brainstorming session and you're going to come up with some breakthrough solution. That's something that is a myth. Creativity is an individual endeavor. It's not a collective one. I have never been in any company in my last 30 years across different sectors and come up with a breakthrough idea out of a brainstorming session. Brainstorming is about getting insight. But then you as an entrepreneur, or you appoint someone, you make someone accountable for that, go away and come up with a solution. And then we review together. And then the market insight comes from. And that's something important to remember. Creativity is an individual, not a collective endeavor. The other thing, foster a culture of creativity. How do you do that? You have to demand creativity from yourself and from your team. But really demand. What I mean is, as Kendall said, you have to make people accountable. for creativity. So in behalf of what we tend to do is make creativity or innovation part of your, one of the things that we assess in your reviews. And I think, guys, this is all I wanted to share with you. It was a bit fast, but I hope it has been useful. Thank you.
Thank you, Williams. We have time for one question, a single one. You have one? Okay.
I know I'm a child, but okay. How do you know when transformation is a gift from God or a distraction from the devil?
I think you really need, and that's, I think, highlights the importance of having a relationship with God, isn't it? I think that's a wonderful question. But I think one thing I know in answer to this question is that we should never stay static in life, you know, for fear of upsetting yourself or anyone or God. God talks to you as you're on the move, and he's going to point you in the right direction, and you have to trust him, to dance with him. So as you are making moves, when you're playing music, when you are being entrepreneur, that he's going to trust, he's going to guide you. So keep doing the things you're doing, and if you receive or you have a feeling that that's not what God wants to do, at that point you pause and experiment of another direction. So seeds is a little bit of a dance, but my only recommendation, never stay static for fear of something. Always continue to move.